fundamentally, when we're engaging with boards, with clients, and they say, we need AI, that's a good starting point, but you need to be a bit more specific. Why AI struggles to gain traction within the organization? There is no real consistent vision across what AI means to the organization. Having a consistent organizational message at each layer is critical to getting people on board. You need a solidified AI strategy that cascades down across the layers to then make operational sense.
Welcome to another episode of Advising the Advisors and your podcast, Bolu from Ken Lee. And today I'm joined with Raf Postepski. Thanks for joining me, Raf.
Thanks for having me.
Raf is the senior director at Alvarez Marsal, where he helps lead their artificial intelligence and machine learning practice. Raf built a career helping the Fortune 500 companies move beyond pilots to projects and build real capabilities that shape how businesses operate at every level. From his early days designing operating models at Author to Little to leading AI efforts at Alvarez Marsal, Raf has been at the forefront of how organizations run and turn AI into a force for change. All right, let's get into it. All right, Raf, could you start by giving us a quick high level of the sort of problems and organizations you help?
I think we need to distill, there's an AI question, but the problems are fundamentally kind of data-led problems. The types of organizations we help with are not necessarily your Googles or your Facebooks or your digital natives that have AI at the heart, but your more legacy organizations whom have, been highly successful through, the early parts of industrialization, going through to the maturity levels, and then now are looking at this big AI topic and what they need to do with it. Boards need it, CEOs want it, investors are calling for it, and there's a whole myriad of confusion between all those different levels of how do I actually practically make it work for me in my business context. And so that, the types of companies we work with are big banks, are manufacturing companies, pharmaceutical companies, basically anybody that has a question that can be answered with data and enhanced capability.
Right. And does there tend to be a function focus, maybe again mostly on customer success or on like finance, or is there, if not vertical focus, at least function? Is there any like split? I think that there is some focus.
There's an operating model question, there's a data question, there's a technology question. So if you can distill it down to a few business outcomes, and you can draw some business use cases out of that and build around that, all of a sudden you can layer that capability and build those foundations to then get you there over time, but you're never going to do it overnight.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so let's dive into like some of the questions I like to pick your brain on. First is let's discuss AI as providing an opportunity to improve quality, as against just like cost cutting with savings, if you will. Curious if you have any thoughts there, like if this is a thing that comes up, or what you feel personally about it, and then we could discuss as like what you're seeing on the market, as to how much like the narrative is changing, or if at all.
So we're seeing kind of a race to the bottom a little bit in terms of value. So the value that that companies really need to think about is not necessarily in the model itself and what it's doing, but the orchestration around the model, the data, the data estate, where it's reading from, how you orchestrate that across the business, how you integrate it into a process. That's going to be the value driver with AI.
Got it.
Very highly. So back to your original question, which was, where are we seeing it in terms of efficiency, in terms of
basically
value?
Like, seeing AI as a driver of quality of processes, or just another like cost cutting opportunity.
Well, cost cutting opportunities. So yes, there is an opportunity there. Can you automate all of that fully? Potentially. Do you want to? That's a business question. But from that lens, yes, there's opportunities to cost out. You can do more with less, or certainly the same amount of productivity with less when you implement AI in an intelligent way.
Yeah, and I think the customer like service is a fantastic example, because like, again, on this question of like quality or like growth versus like cost cutting. Again, maybe it doesn't have to be the versus, they don't have to be like in contention. You can have a case whereby I think there was a case study where they gave to your point about knowledge bases, they gave these tools to the actual human agents, and then they were able to go from just again solving problems for customers to upselling.
Yeah.
Right. Where again, you have the full feature of the customer. You would like retrieve like, hey, like this customer mentioned this thing, and then the agent kind of recommends, hey, you should probably recommend this product to them as it solves this. It goes beyond solving the problem they have to say like, it might be a good fit for the customer profiles. Like, so that's kind of like one example where I think again, in a pre-AI world, like you're now getting more revenue per customers or representative than you would otherwise. That's against just seeing it as cost cutting opportunity. Even like the productivity per person goes up if they have better tools.
And more importantly, when you're thinking about the quality of the interaction,
right,
and the brand messaging, you can bake all of that in to be really, really consistent and tight. Whereas a human might go off script a little bit and say something here and there. But
yeah,
so there's an element of control you have. There's an element of optimization in the back end of that model to say, if you are seeing this type of thread, you can go down a certain pathway to potentially upsell a particular product or look at some client retention or however you want to gamify. But you give the model an outcome and it steers towards that almost in a gamified way.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one we have here is one of the biggest challenges we've heard senior enterprises are facing when deploying AI is adoption, right? So again, they have the pilot with a focus group of people, let's say 50, it's successful. They get excited, they want to roll out to the entire org. Again, overnight, 700, 1,000 people get access to these tools, but adoption is low. Different reasons we've heard why. One of them is, for example, because of like tool sprawl, we've called it, where you buy one point solution for one use case as against having a cohesive experience. Just curious to hear just like engage with the issue of like adoption and ROI and how like companies are thinking of that, because again, it's not going to get value if your people aren't using it, and what some of like problems and solutions you're seeing there.
Yeah, so this is a multifaceted question. So let me try and answer it on a couple of different levels. Fundamentally, when we're engaging with boards, with clients, and they say we need AI, and say, okay, great, that's a good starting point, but you need to be a bit more specific. Why AI struggles to gain traction within the organization, and then as an extension of that, bring value to the organization. There's also a structural barrier because companies haven't quite figured out, maybe they have, but they're not doing it as quickly as potentially could be, is an organizational model level. AI at the core of any organization fundamentally shifts and evolves the operating model. And a lot of companies haven't done that yet. So they're still looking at AI around the periphery and still looking at, maybe we can do a POC here or a POC there, but that POC never really gets embedded into the operating heart of the business because they don't know how to do that, because there's a structural limitation with that operating model.
Yeah.
Which is why we're seeing tool sprawl, which is why we're seeing shadow IT all over the place, which is why we're seeing organizations whom, their leaders, their functional leaders are getting fed up with IT because IT is not moving quick enough. They don't have the bandwidth. So they're building their own shadow organization. They'll build out a team of, 6 to 10 data scientists to do some very, very specific functional stuff.
Function, right?
Yeah. Right, and very targeted use cases. And yes, they do move the needle for that business. But then if you have 3, 4, 5 of those adjacent teams working in silos, it creates a lot of confusion. And then obviously the end users are like, well, I got to use this tool for my transcription, and I've got to use this tool for some optimization engine that I need to do with my marketing mix. And all of a sudden there's too much and people get overwhelmed. So you need a solidified AI strategy that then cascades down across the layers to then make operational sense. And then you need a way to implement that in a cohesive and a thoughtful way from a call it a tech transformation perspective.
Yeah.
You need the right tooling, you need the right infrastructure, you need access to the right data, you need the data in the right areas and the accessibility around that to then build an ecosystem that everybody can leverage, not a whole bunch of tools that people use. So The problem with either one, you kind of want to go top down and the bottom up and meet somewhere in the middle where it makes sense. And I know that's probably a cop out answer,
Yeah, no, that's fair.
but
That's fair.
fundamentally,
Yeah.
like if you go bottom up, you end up with a lot of shadow IT, very specific things, because the lower down you are in the organization, the more tactical you are in how you operate. You want to do a better job with your specific function, right? So you're going to build a tool or bring in a capability that's going to help augment that specific function without the wider understanding of how it could assist and help or affect other parts of the business. So that's where a lot of the tool creep can happen. To combat that, you need a centralized view, not necessarily at the top, but somewhere kind of in the mid layer, to keep people on track. Yes, here's the target that we're moving towards, what that means in terms of your sole function. Let's look at these key capabilities and let's make them shared capabilities, because some of these foundations can be leveraged across other parts of the organization. So you kind of need to do a little bit of both and meet in the middle.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so next one we have here is, and again, it kind of engages with the idea of like trusting the people on the ground to some extent to know what workflows will drive value for their use case. So this next question is about like doing the same thing at the scale of the industry, which is, does every industry need its own AI, right? So again, I guess in the early innings of Gen AI, most of the big wins came from the big players, right? The ChatGPT had environment, and I guess Copilot to some extent as like, again, just a generic thing that, again, this is enterprise AI, whatever that means, or consumer AI. What are your thoughts here on like if how you think things are today and how they're evolving towards like each industry having its own AI? And again, feel free to go drill in even within the industry, i.e. within functions, for example. I.e. do we have like something for like insurance and for underwriting? And is that level of specificity like even useful, or should we just invest in like, again, should enterprises invest in more broadly deployed general tools and customize somehow?
I'm of the mind that you don't necessarily need to go hyper specialized.
Got
Now,
it.
there are going to be cases.
Okay.
I think insurance is a really good case
Yeah.
of having something that's insurance focused.
Okay.
Underwriting is very specific. It has a very specific kind of flow, logic to it. It probably makes sense in that. But let's park the uber specific stuff. I think when it comes to AI, it's about how you codify the data that you're working within. How do you codify your IP, your processes, how you do things as a business? And then you tell the model what you want.
Right.
And I know it's probably going to go that way because people are clever and people want to be, I'm an engineer of 30, 40 years experience, and I know how these processes work, and I built the model for that.
Okay.
You don't fundamentally need that. It's not saying that it's going to be a waste of time. It's not. It's going to be very useful. But you can get to a very similar outcome with the generic model as long as you just codify the logic behind it in a better way.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing from you is like, yeah, to your point, like, again, the models, the base are a commodity, but what is on top of them is the processes, the workflows. I think that you think will be worth investing in, obviously, like in codifying your industry and even like organization specifics. As we here's how we do things on top of that. That obviously to you, I like everybody, again, the insurance underwriting case, like they shouldn't show up and just have a ChatGPT UI text box, generic unopinionated text box in front of them, right? That has to do.
Do they need a specific finance-based model? No, they don't. But what they do need to do is figure out their IP, their secret sauce, what gives them that competitive edge in their investing strategy, codify that, and then you can ask a model to help you be more efficient with synthesizing that information, with curating that key those key investment points to make a better decision faster. The key there is you want to own the stuff that the model is looking into. The model itself just needs to be told what to do. That is probably where we're going to be moving more in terms of do I build something myself? Do I buy in something and just focus on the stuff that's competitively sensitive to me? So one of my old partners at ADL would always say, you build for competitive advantage, you buy for parity. And I think that's very, very true, especially when it comes to some of these models. No, if you look at my career arc, right, I started off in banking in Toronto, and there's many facets of it. And I had an appreciation for how things operate on the ground. So a big knock of consulting is a lot of people have never actually done anything. They've just theorized about it. So I think, at least in the context of A&M brings a lot of very, 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 very senior people, very talented people,
Okay.
but that have come from industry operators.
Mm.
And
So that is a profile almost,
that
you
that
think?
that is a
Okay.
profile of A&M. They bring a lot of operators. So some of my colleagues are ex-CIOs of large institutions, operating partners from PE funds, like people that go in, make a difference. So how did my experience in industry from my early on career in through to where I am today affect me? It gave me an operational lens, not just a theoretical strategic lens. And I think the blend of the two have served me well. And I think,
Yeah.
that's why implementation, what a lot of clients are asking for is not just the high level theory or the strategy or the tell me what I should do, but help me get there, please. And I think there's certain consultancies, I think A&M is certainly one of them, that are well positioned to do that, and get you from a standing start to a gentle jog to then a run, and then we walk away and leave them self sufficient. They want a more integrated partnership, not just a strategy document.
What they should expect to be doing. Well, I guess not that you had a crystal ball, but if you had any like intuitions or you think the practice is going.
Well, I think there's some generic stuff that anybody whether you're in consulting or going into industry, need to focus on, and then I'll go a little bit more into consulting side. Fundamentally, you need to build up your resilience. It's okay to screw up. It's okay to understand that you made a mistake, but what you really need to focus on is owning that, learning from it, and asking for help along the way. So many young kids today are afraid to make a mistake because their entire academic career has been perfect, and they don't. And some people just don't know how to deal with a mistake, or I won't say failure, but
Setbacks, yeah.
setbacks,
Yeah.
right? So you need to build your resilience and say it's okay. The world isn't ending. You made a mistake. We're expecting you to make a mistake. Just it's what you do next that's going to differentiate you, right? So build that resilience, and lean on your colleagues and your management, your supervisors to help you and work with you to get over that. In that vein, I think what AI has brought to the table is, I think the big trend over the last few years in consulting, certainly about when I started at ADL, was you needed to be a hyper industry expert, right? So in telco or in pharma, and there are advantages to that because it lends credibility with clients. But that is no longer kind of the holy grail of being the guy that people call for tel.
That's very interesting because like that was the implicit, assumption in my opening question to you. Is it like vertical or function focus? In my leading question as to the work you do. And yes, like so I guess like this is like non-obvious
Well,
to most people. You think
it
like why do you think AI does this? Like
well because you can interrogate AI in a very specific way, and get that insight, that deep industry expertise and insight, and ramp up very quickly. What where the skill is being able to synthesize that and bring in examples across industry to make it make sense on a practical level. So you're moving away from a premium on hyper specialists to more generalists, but who can synthesize information, piece things together, look at what context makes sense from other industries, and bring those into your client discussions because they make sense. Because you know doing what every single telco does isn't necessarily going to set you apart and give you any advantage, but layering certain things from what technology is doing, what big tech's doing, what manufacturing's doing, how things are evolving in a telco setting, can give you a couple clues to say, okay, well, if we're gonna look at a slightly different tack or strategy, then here's where it's working, and here's some of the themes that we can employ and further explore to give you that little bit of a competitive edge. And then the third thing I think is storytelling. Learn how to tell a story, be personable and just figure out how to engage on a peer-to-peer level. Nobody wants to talk technical. Nobody wants to talk data. People remember stories. People don't remember facts. People remember feelings and anecdotes and how they felt in that conversation. They don't want to be blasted with specific tendencies. People remember feelings and anecdotes and examples that they can then drive familiarity from. They don't want to be peppered with facts. They don't want to be peppered with data.
Yeah.
So storytelling is a very, very key skill, certainly in consulting, but in the corporate world as well. You need to get your ideas across. You need to sell a concept. You do that through storytelling.
I like that. Yeah. So there's again, resilience to adversity. There is be comfortable with being a journalist, but using tools available to you, obviously like with AI, and be able to synthesize the information across different industries and storytelling.
Those are my top three.
Yeah.
If I was at a business school
Yeah,
today,
yeah.
I'd say those. You nail those three, you'll be fine.
Yeah. And have you like this? These didn't sound like they just came off the top of the dome. Like, have you been intentional with these all through? Like, is this like the arc of your career, if you will? You've been intentionally trying to like build all these different muscles.
Yes, I've been working on my storytelling. It's an evolving process. You get it right sometimes, and you get it masterfully wrong sometimes. But it's a process. You're never gonna master it. You're just gonna continue to improve.
I like that. Yeah. So if we could please close off with like the new exciting work you have going on at A&M. I think you were telling me before we started recording as to like some of the new directions or emphasis areas like the firm is pushing for. Be curious to hear what that sounds like.
Yeah, well, we are a relatively new team at A&M. A&M is have brought in an AI capability, and we're trying to expand that and work within our clients and within our colleagues. And I think we are just trying to make AI practical, operationally practical. It doesn't need to be a massive strategic thing that no one really understands, or this massive framework that consultants love to build sometimes. But fundamentally, at least in the mid to short term, short to midterm, and even into the immediate long term, what's going to happen is people are not going to be replaced by machines, but what's going to happen is the people that refuse to interact with those machines, refuse to interact and embrace AI on a daily basis, they may get left behind and replaced by the people that do. Because AI, the way we're seeing with language models and ChatGPT is the greatest example. They're a productivity tool, and they're helping us do our jobs better and faster. So fundamentally, if you're not leveraging AI on a daily basis, and I include that with consulting, if you're not practicing what you preach on a daily basis to do better for you and your organization and your clients, then you're fundamentally going to get left behind. And I think that's where the trajectory is going. AI is an augmentation to us as people at the moment, and we need to embrace it.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds like a great place to wrap up. Thanks for joining us today, Raf.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.